Hello, and welcome to the Wild Free Will podcast. I am about to share a very embarrassing story with you. I just recorded this episode of the podcast, 45 minutes long. It had to have been at least, and it was an absolute masterpiece. And you know what happened? For the first time in my life, now I'm checking like a mad person, I did not record it. 45 minutes of pure channeled energy, and it did not record. It is heartbreaking. So here we are, round 2, doing it again. There is no way that I'm going to manage to make it 45 minutes again because I do these episodes with no notes. They come basically just straight from my heart. And it's going to be very difficult for me to repeat exactly what I said, but we are going to give it a try. So I am here today to talk to you about a very, very, very important subject, a conversation that I have been having with a lot of clients. And now I'm checking like just a mad person. Like there's no way. I'm just going to keep looking at the screen because I need to make sure it's recording. I am here to have a really important conversation with you about a conversation that I have been having with a lot of clients lately. And the conversation is going to include me sharing what is inevitably going to be a deeply, deeply unpopular opinion, okay? And this unpopular opinion, which apparently is honestly the only kind of opinion that I have, is going to be around debunking the myth of laziness. So I want to start off by saying that I think that in general, there is a collective kind of idea or feeling that we as humans are never doing enough. Just need to take a sip of water. Sorry, guys. We are never doing enough, and we always need to be doing a little bit more. Now, I talk about this all the time on the podcast. I am literally a broken record, and I would almost apologize for it, but I, shan't. Basically, part of this comes from the images and the things that we are engaging with. Now, that may be on social media. In other cases, it might be films or television shows where we're seeing an image of the way that people live their lives, and we are comparing ourselves to that image, right? Even though we know in our heart of hearts that that image is not true, that it is not the whole story, and that it is based quite heavily in this like fantasy of how life could be, okay? So that is often what we're being shown in marketing, on television, on social media, whatever it might be. And the problem is that we tend to compare our very real and very messy lives with these kind of picture perfect images that we see online or wherever. And what ends up happening is there's this underlying feeling of we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough. We need to be doing more. We need to be working harder. If we just worked harder, then life would look like that. And we compare ourselves to these people because we see that they have these things that we want, or they're doing these things that we want to do, or they have a lifestyle that really appeals to us. And we think that, this person does this, this, and this, and has that, that, and that. And we want those things for ourselves, and we assume that the reason why we don't have them is because we're lazy or we just aren't doing enough, right? And my own personal version of this is like not social media, because I don't really engage with anyone on social media in all honesty, but is I guess Hallmark movies. That would be as close as it comes to me. So like in Hallmark movies, you see these people who live in these all white houses, and they have children, and they have dogs, and all white furniture, and they're wearing their shoes inside. And it's like, that is no one's life. That is no one's life. For as much as I love Mila, I do not have the capacity within me to be able to clean her in a way that would allow me to have an all white house or like a white couch or any of those things. That would last like about a week, and then that dream would be dead. So we know that these images are not real, and yet we compare our real lives to these images, okay? And something that I will say about this discussion, about us wanting to always do more, be more, have more, and so on and so forth, is that like sometimes we can't see the forest for the trees. So something that we need in these situations is to have a really rock solid to have a really rock solid support system. Because when we have a support system, they are able to reflect back to us the things that potentially we can't see within ourselves. So I feel very blessed to have my partner who, on the days where I come out and I say, oh, I just didn't do enough, I didn't get all the things done, I had so much work that I wanted to do, and I had to do this, this, and this, and I only did about half or whatever, he will come up to me and say, okay, but you did this, 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 and this. Is that not enough? And he will kind of reflect that back to me, and he will show me that line or that limit of enoughness that perhaps I wasn't fully able to see myself. In the same way that I do this with him. So my partner has a tendency to do too much all the time in every situation. And I am pretty much near constantly telling him that he is doing too much. Now, his natural energy is also to do too much. So I have to be mindful of that because that's a part of who he is. He is very multi-passionate, very creative, and he likes to have his hands in lots of things. But when it gets to an extreme where he's pushing too hard and it looks like it's veering towards being excessive, at that point I say, do you realize that you're doing too much? It's not even that he's doing enough. He's doing way more than is strictly necessary, and he needs to calm down. And so I reflect that back to him. And having a support system that shows us what we are not maybe inherently able to see about ourselves is a really good way to combat the discussion that we are about to have, okay, about laziness. So, my unpopular opinion about laziness is that, are you ready? Laziness does not exist. The idea of laziness does not actually exist. Okay? Why? Well, what is laziness exactly? Laziness, I think, is almost the opposite of productivity. But we need to be really mindful about that conversation, because let's take an example of somebody who, has a to-do list that's like A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, Z. Okay? They have this like massive to-do list, and they're not maybe accomplishing all of the things on their to-do list, and so they are calling themselves lazy. The thing though is that laziness is this kind of blanket term that is this kind of cover-all or catch-all for something that we are trying to avoid. So it's this blanket term that we are using as a story that we are buying into that is kind of hiding the truth or the real story. So you are not lazy. What is actually happening is you are most likely having an emotional reaction to something that is going on in your life. If we take the example of the person who has the miles long to-do list, the likelihood is that they are feeling overwhelmed by their to-do list, and they are afraid of facing the to-do list or afraid of facing the overwhelm, and so they have a little bit shut down. Okay, they have shut down a little bit, and they are avoiding facing the to-do list, and they are calling that laziness. Because when we are having an emotional reaction to something and we don't fully know how to deal with it, what sometimes happens is we just kind of look for a way out. And laziness is a term that kind of justifies why we aren't doing something. Okay, we're going to come back to this in a second. But if you are feeling overwhelmed, then there could be another way to deal with this that is not the avoidance of doing something else. Okay, taking a break and having a rest is not laziness. This actually makes me so angry to even have to say, okay, but taking a break, okay, or like taking a pause or resting is not laziness, okay? It goes against what we are taught in the system that we live in, okay? The system that we live in prides itself on two things: human beings that are producers and consumers, okay? And you need to be doing one of those two things. You need to be producing via your work, or consuming what other people have produced via their work. And that is pretty much it. So when we talk about resting, people tend to use the term laziness when they rest. This is so dangerous and so damaging, and it is deeply, deeply, deeply untrue. Okay, if you are resting, could it be because you are actually tired? Because you actually need a break? Human beings are not machines. We are not meant to go all the time. We are not meant to produce all the time. We are not meant to be in this constant go, 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 go energy, okay, at all. We are meant to slow down. We are meant to take time. And there is an energetic difference, no, between the person who decides to rest. Paint this picture with me, okay? There's the person who decides to rest, who does so without guilt, without shame, and without judgment. They are going to have a very different outcome, okay? And a very different kind of sense of satisfaction or restful experience than the person who is resting but calling themselves lazy the entire time. Because there are those days, right, where you just don't want to do anything. You want to lie on the couch, you want to scroll on your phone a little bit, read a book, watch a movie, whatever it is, right? It doesn't really matter. There are days when you want to do those things. But if you're calling yourself lazy, it is deeply, deeply unkind and ungracious to yourself. And it is taking away the value of you taking a break in the first place. It's certainly not eliminating the value, but I mean, it's not as valuable as it would be if you were to actually just really sink into the juiciness of fully disconnecting and really actively taking a break. Okay? Taking a break is not a bad thing, and we really need to normalize this in a culture that does not invite us to believe that. There is nothing about our culture or the systems that we inhabit that applauds or lauds taking a break. And this idea of laziness is also this cultural kind of paradigm that has been built up because we are valuable as human beings when we are producing. And so another side of this argument is just this idea that like you are worthy no matter what is going on, no matter what you are doing, no matter how you show up. You are worthy now. You will be worthy tomorrow. You will be worthy if you take 2 steps back. It doesn't make a difference. But we are not taught this. We are taught that the only way to be truly valuable is to be doing something, moving forward, achieving more, having more, doing more, being more. And there's nothing wrong with that if that is a true desire of your heart. Okay? If that is something that really speaks to you, then there is nothing wrong with that. But when we are moving towards these things somewhat blindly, and because we are trying to meet these social markers or these social mileposts that are arbitrary and have been decided by who knows who even, okay, but that we've all collectively bought into, that does not mean that we are lazy, okay? Like we are not meant to be moving in that way all of the time. And we really need to understand that laziness is simply this blanket term that we use to cover up a very real emotional reaction to something that is happening in our lives. Let's take the example of health, okay? I've been having a conversation with a client about this lately, and about wanting to get into shape, and she wants to get healthy and all of these things, and like there's this idea that she is just lazy. And if we are talking about health in general, maybe exercising, if you are not wanting to go to the gym, let's say, and you're calling that lazy, what is actually potentially happening is that, maybe you're afraid. Maybe you're afraid of going to the gym. Maybe you are afraid of not making a fool of yourself while you're there, not knowing how to use one of the machines or whatever it might be. Maybe you are afraid of not like knowing how to move in that environment. Maybe you're afraid of not having instant gratification from whatever you're doing. That one day in the gym and then all of a sudden like you're hot and fit. Like we have that in our society. We're so used to the instant gratification that when we don't get it, it can be quite jarring. And so there's all these emotional reactions that are happening beneath the surface, but the only story that we're telling ourselves is that we're just lazy because we don't go to the gym. when actually perhaps we don't like the gym. Perhaps that's not what our body is asking for right now. Maybe that's not what we actually need, but we're kind of forcing ourselves again into this preconceived paradigm of what health looks like, of how we get healthy, because we get healthy by going to the gym. I mean, not necessarily, but also we can. That doesn't have to be the only option though. And then there's also this idea of like, I was speaking to another client about work, and he was talking to me about how, he's just not feeling very like excited by his work, and it's not really, it's not really speaking to him right now, but he kind of just needs to, get on with it. And we've talked about this before on other episodes of the podcast, this like kind of just do it attitude that tends to be really prevalent in masculine or people who are in a very energetically masculine moment of their lives, or if they're operating from that kind of energy. There's this idea of like, I just need to get on with it. I just need to do it. And if I just do it, it will get better. And we know that that's not true, because if we're not doing something, it is also because we are having an emotional reaction to whatever that thing is that we are not dealing with. Okay, but we call ourselves lazy. And so in this conversation with him, I said, do you think that like it's possible that you might be burnt out? Like, does that feel like something that could be true for you? Because I wasn't diagnosing him or telling him what he was experiencing, but trying to dive a little bit beneath the surface. And he was just kind of expressing, no, I feel like I just kind of need to like just move forward. Like I need to find a way to do the things that I need to do. And whenever we are doing that, we are coming at ourselves with this punishing energy, because we are ignoring the truth of what is hiding beneath this idea of being lazy. We are not giving ourselves a chance to actually face whatever emotional reaction we are having, because potentially we are afraid of what we will find. Maybe we're afraid of what that thing is. Maybe we're afraid that we won't be able to deal with it if we do figure out what it is. But all that it's doing is perpetuating this kind of cycle of you not necessarily feeling very good about yourself and not being able necessarily to move forward. It really just keeps you stuck. It really keeps you stuck. And then going back to what I said earlier, we often use laziness as a justification. And there's something so juicy about this. Like, it's so good, because if we are self-identifying as laziness, okay, so this is identity work. If we are saying, I am lazy, okay, we are calling ourselves that, labeling ourselves that. When we are self-identifying as lazy, then it frees us up to have much lower standards, to not show up in a way that we want to. Like, we are just able to avoid a ton of things because all we have to say is, oh, well, I'm lazy. And this is another argument that I will say does not exist. Laziness, the term lazy, the word lazy, all of these things do not exist. They are simply a blanket term or a cover up or a justification for avoiding whatever the emotional underbelly of this is, okay? And it can be scary, but that's where the juice of life is us being able to really deal with these things. And if you are here listening to this podcast, having this conversation with me, I can promise you it is not because you are interested in bypassing whatever it is that is going on in your life. Because if you were interested in spiritual bypassing or spiritual candy or personal development light, you would be listening to another podcast, one that talks all about why something is magical, but not how to actually do the thing, okay? And here we are always talking about the intersection of the idea of whatever we are talking about and how to actually move forward. So here, the how is really not even a thing, because the idea here is mostly just about debunking this myth of being lazy or laziness as a term or as an idea. And what I would encourage you to do is to sit with this and see if any of what I've said resonates with you. And if it's pissed you off, as it may have, and it would have pissed you off a lot more in the 45-minute version of this podcast, if it has pissed you off, then please, please, please have a conversation with me, because I would love to chat about this. Convince me that I'm wrong. I would love for you to share an opposing opinion and tell me why you don't agree, or tell me why you do agree with this idea, whatever it might be. Let's have a conversation, because that's how we learn. That's how we get different facets of the scenario or of the situation, how we're able to alter or expand our viewpoint and really grow as people. So I would love to have a conversation about this. But if this is something that has pissed you off, or that you feel like you have resonated with in some way, I want you to think about why. Okay, you might hear what I'm saying and say, oh, this sounds like the truth. And that is because there is a part of you that inside has already taken this idea on board. There is already a part of you that knows and believes this to be true. Okay. And one of the other things that I talked about in the original episode that did not record was this idea of us having a bigger cultural conversation. We need to begin to ask ourselves why we are choosing to self-identify with these things in the first place. Why is this idea of laziness even a thing? Why does this exist? And part of it is to fuel us again in this constant battle of production and consumption and all of those things. But it needs to be taken to an even broader level. Why are we not having a conversation about why certain things are considered productive or good or wonderful and other things are not? For example, why is rest so poorly viewed in the society? I mean, it's obvious because it goes against the production. But what I'm saying is, why are we not having a conversation about that? Why are we working 40 hours a week? Now, I understand that we could be having a conversation about well, I need to work 40 hours a week. I have to pay for my bills. I have to do these things. Yes. And then also we need to be having a conversation about why that is. Why is it right now so difficult to afford things? Why is it that there are people out there who need to work 2-3 jobs in order to survive? Why is it the norm that we are working 40 hours per week? Why? And I understand that this podcast is not necessarily going to be the thing that changes the world, and that's fine. But it is a very interesting thing to think about, the fact that we are not having these collective conversations where they need to be had. We are not having these in corporations, in multinationals, in politics, with the government or whatever. We are having these conversations behind closed doors. But we do need to begin to question, always first internally, and then, perhaps with other people and in a broader sense. But we need to internally understand why we are buying into the stories of how things should be or how things are. And someone could say to me, well, that's just the way it is. Or something like, well, that's the way it's always been done. Let me tell you that there is no worse reason, literally, to do something than because it has always been done that way. That is such a piss poor reason to continue doing something that doesn't necessarily make any sense on paper. Okay. And that is not benefiting us as human beings, as individuals. It is potentially benefiting the collective to a certain extent. It is certainly benefiting the individual that is at the top of whatever pyramid we all belong to. Okay. But it is not necessarily beneficial to the individual human being for us to continue moving in this way. And it is certainly not beneficial for us to continue perpetuating this story. And I promise you, it really genuinely is just a story of laziness. Because the only thing that it is doing is making us feel bad, making us feel like we are never doing enough, like we are not good enough as humans. And it is perpetuating the myth that we need to constantly be producing. But why? Why do we need to constantly produce? To what end? And also to whose end? Who does our production or our productivity benefit? Is it us? Sometimes, okay, maybe, right? I'm being productive recording this podcast. This podcast puts me in front of more people and it helps me potentially find new clients and stuff like that. So yes, potentially this productivity also benefits me. But there is also a bigger story, okay, in the collective of our producing. I would argue that my producing, because I work for myself, is less valuable than somebody who is working to produce for someone else. Because my production benefits mostly me and then I suppose the government because of the taxes, right? But it's not necessarily benefiting like some kind of, there's not really a huge pyramid here the way that there would be in like a corporation, the way that there is even in the government itself. So there's just, we need to be having these conversations though about why we're choosing to buy into a story collectively, like collectively buy into a story that does not serve us, that keeps us stuck, and that really only seems to benefit a few people in the grand scheme of things. Okay? Because I can promise you with all of me that if you are able to release this story and stop calling yourself lazy, it will benefit your life more than this punishing criticism ever possibly could. If you are able to stop calling yourself, viewing yourself, and identifying as lazy, you will inevitably be more productive. That is not the point. Okay, that is not why we are here having this conversation. We are here having this conversation because this whole idea of laziness, in my opinion, does not really exist. It is not real. It is just something that has become real and more tangible because we're all giving our energy to it, okay? But even if you are able to release this story, you will be infinitely more productive in the long term for yourself and for your own benefit, because productivity will shift. Productivity will look like taking a break. It'll look like having the nap. It'll look like taking the day off work, taking a vacation, going away and doing the things that you want to do for you and using those as fuel. It will no longer be punishing yourself and basically whipping yourself saying, you're lazy, keep going, you're lazy, do more, you're lazy, blah, 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 blah. That is not true. And I have said this already, but I will reiterate it. You are good enough. None of this discussion about laziness or productivity has anything to do with your inherent worth, okay? And if you learn to let go of the terminology of laziness, if you refuse to buy into this story, you will be just as worthy today and you will be tomorrow as you were before, okay? It doesn't matter where you are on your journey, you are worthy regardless. Okay. And it is about you tapping back into that. But having this conversation with yourself where you are calling yourself lazy, you are sort of punishing yourself in this way, long term is going to have a very negative impact. And it is going to make you feel small and bad about yourself. And that is not what we're here for. We're here to thrive. We're here to live well. Okay. I am so sorry and saddened that this was not the episode that I originally recorded because it was so incredibly magical. But that's what being a human is about. And I am here doing the thing anyways, to the best of my ability. And I hope that this episode resonated with you and that it landed. I had originally recorded a promo talking about my Telegram group at the beginning. If this is something that appeals to you, like if you would like to have and be in deeper conversations with me, then the Telegram group is by far the best way to do it. You can sign up to my newsletter as well. I share things there that I love. I'm being like I'm really engaging deeply with my newsletter as well lately, and I'm really enjoying that. But the Telegram group for me is where I get to be the most me because it is a conversation. And I am able to share video, audio, text, photos, everything, and just really create an immersive environment that is a deeply, deeply safe space. I have been wanting to do this for so long, and just to create a space that was not social media, because I don't think that's what we need right now. I think that we are craving something deeper, something more sacred, something more that connects us more than social media does. Social media is almost like a fake sort of connection. But here we are having the hard conversations, and I share, if you can believe it, even more personal things there than I do here on the podcast. So if that's something that appeals to you, I would really love to have you. You can find it, the link in the show notes. And otherwise, I just hope that you have the most deeply restful weekend and that you are able to really really release any thoughts, any ideas of laziness, and just sink into the juiciness that is really guilt-free rest, and the energy that that gives you, and the fuel that it provides for you to move forward, to go after all of the beautiful things that you want to achieve in your life. That is part of the secret. I love you deeply. I am so grateful that you are here. If you liked this episode, you know that same jazz. Like, share, comment, rate, subscribe. It took me a second there to get those words out. But yes, I would love to engage with you. And every time you do those things, it helps me to reach more people, and it just really means the world to me. So if this resonated, please, by all means. And yeah, I will see you on the next episode of the podcast. Ciao.